This is JOUST for the Atari 7800, the Pro System. JOUST arrived in the arcades in 1982 and was published by Williams. And I think this game is brilliant. I think this is one of the most ingenious arcade games ever made. Now, if we look at this game as an arcade game, it has a lot in common with another game that I really enjoy called Robotron 2084, also by Williams. The whole concept of an arcade game, unlike a home system, was to get people to stand there at the arcade game and put quarters into the machine. Now, you'd obviously want to have those games being played as short as possible so the people standing there would put in as many quarters as possible to keep playing. And JOUST and Robotron both excel at that because they're both extremely fun, but very, very challenging. And typically the games don't last that long, unlike Ms. Pac-Man, for instance, which I'm much better at Ms. Pac-Man, so I can stand there and hog the Ms. Pac-Man machine for quite some time, whereas on JOUST or Robotron you get blown off the arcade machine pretty quick, because they're very tough games. Especially if you don't have the system at home to be able to sit there and master it, and that was certainly the case in the early 1980s. JOUST was brought over to the home systems in 1983. It came out on the Atari 2600, and this version of JOUST for the Atari 7800 came out a few years later in 86 or 87. And this is a very faithful representation of the arcade JOUST. We have pretty much all the features in the original game. We have the hand that comes up and tries to grab you from the lava. The eggs land and sit there and they hatch little JOUST guys. And I mean, this is just ingenious. One of the reasons this game is great and unique and challenging is the way that you control your bird. You flap the wings with your button and you just use a joystick to control it. So you have to actually master piloting this bird around screen, which is very difficult. It won't change directions instantly like in a game like Ms. Pac-Man or Dig Dug or something. It's much more challenging to get the bird to go where you want it to go, and that actually creates most of the challenge in the game. There's a wonderful variety of ways to get points. You get points by killing your enemies, by collecting their eggs. You get more points if you get the eggs in midair right after you hit them. The enemies increase in difficulty from red to gray to blue. You have pterodactyls that come at you. This is that classic two-dimensional arcade style that they need to make more of today. Just think what they could do if they made JOUST 3 for the 360 or PS3. JOUST has some tremendous packaging art. Yet one thing I never understood about Atari 7800 game cartridges, for the most part, is that they had just this black and white image on a silver cartridge, unlike the very colorful Atari 2600 cartridges. I suppose that was to differentiate them from one another, but I think the Atari 7800 cartridges look boring. They probably could have done something else than just black and white on silver, unless they already knew the 7800 was a complete failure because it was getting its ass handed to it by the NES, and they were just trying to save costs by doing a black and white print job. And if you stay on screen too long, the pterodactyls come out to get you, so you can't take too long to clear out the level. For all these reasons, I think that JOUST is one of the best arcade games ever made. And it may not be as famous today as Pac-Man or Q*bert, because it doesn't have like a cute central character. But I can just theorize now they wanted to get the most money into those machines that they could, and JOUST and Robotron had to just be fantastic games at doing that. I love the screeching tire sound the bird makes when it comes to a stop. It reminds me of the Wile E. Coyote cartoons. This game suspends disbelief so well that you actually believe that's what the bird sounds like when it's coming to a stop. Now, we've seen Joust on pretty much every video game system ever since the Atari 2600. And now Joust can be played on the Xbox Live game console, and Classic Game Room HD will hopefully be reviewing that soon. But like many arcade titles, the game falls short when played with a gamepad, and especially the Xbox controller, which I really don't care for arcade games. It's pretty good for shooting games, but not so much for arcade titles where you have to mash that button. And Joust can be taxing on your button-pushing finger, because you have to continually hammer away at that button, especially when you're trying to rapidly gain some height. I first played Joust on the Atari 7800, and when I grew up I had a 7800 and a couple games. I didn't have as many games as it probably sounds now that I'm doing a review show, but in the very beginning I had Joust, I had Robotron 2084, I had Xevious, and those were my favorite games on the 7800, and I played them a lot. So this is the first format in which I saw Joust. I didn't even have this game on the 2600. The good thing about Joust is it's a great game no matter what game system you play it on, because it doesn't rely on specifically just graphics to make it fun. It's fun because you're flying a giant bird around with a big staff trying to stab your opponents in the head, but in reality what you want to do is not stab them but land on them with your giant bird ass. But that wouldn't have made nearly as sexy and as exciting a game title as Joust. Like, it probably wouldn't sound as cool if you said that you had the high score in bird ass. Joust is certainly a better title. Say, Timmy, what are you going to do with those quarters at the arcade? Well, I'm going to put them into bird ass. Timmy, don't ever go to the arcade again.